Now let's look at pawns. So pawns are the foot soldiers in chess. They form the front line on both sides, and they're relatively humble pieces. So pawns move one square at a time forward, except on their first move. On their first move, they get a head start. So if that pawn is on its starting square, it can move 2 squares or just 1 square. It's your choice. So again, 1 square or 2 squares. However, to capture, pawns do not move straight forward to capture. Instead, they capture diagonally to one of the 2 sides. And again, you can see here, we capture diagonally to the side. Now, pawns have one more special ability. Although they start off as the weakest pieces in the game, if a pawn reaches the other side of the board, it gets to promote. And when it promotes, a pawn can become any other piece except a king or a pawn. So in this case, let's choose the queen since it's the most powerful piece. And as you can see, we now have a queen instead of a pawn. So promoting your pawns can be a very powerful strategy to upgrade your army, and it should be something that you keep in mind when playing chess. So we just finished talking about pawn moves, but actually we're not quite done with them just yet. There's one other special type of move that can be involved for pawns called en passant. So en passant means in passing in French, and it describes exactly what the move is. So, as you may remember, I hope you remember, on the first move, pawns have the ability to move 2 squares instead of just 1. So as you can see here, this pawn right here can move 2 squares. After we move it once, it can only move 1 square. So what happens when you have a pawn that moves 2 squares on the first move? Well, if that pawn moves 2 squares and it passes an enemy pawn, the enemy pawn then has the option to capture your pawn in passing. So you see here, we pass this black pawn. So what that means is that this black pawn now has the option to capture us in passing, essentially as if we had only moved 1 square. And so if we try to find another example here, let's say this black pawn moves here, then again, we can capture it in passing, en passant, as if this pawn had actually only moved 1 square. And let's just go back here real quickly, and we see again, if we had only moved 1 square, we could still capture this way. And one more example. Let's say white moves here, then again, black is en passant, and we capture. Please keep in mind that this does not apply to if the pawn only moves 1 square and passes another pawn. In this case, we do not have en passant. En passant only happens when a pawn moves 2 squares and passes an enemy pawn.